Hello, Deborah with Preservation Publications and Preservation 2012 on YouTube. I was asked to write an op-ed piece on an incident that happened in February in Philadelphia. It was a confrontation between Mark Fiorino and the Philadelphia Police Department. Essentially what happened is that Mr. Fiorino chose to open carry within the city limits. A police officer stopped Mr. Fiorino because of the open carry, drew his gun, and proceeded to ask him a number of questions and give him a number of orders. When the police officer was not getting the responses or the actions that he needed, he called for backup. Other police came to the scene, and it just continued from there. What wasn't known to the police officers was that Mr. Fiorino had been tape recording the entire incident. And I will tell you now that I'm about to use some pretty unsavory language, so if you're sensitive to that, please turn the video off now. At some point after the discovery of the voice recorder, you can hear an officer say, "He set us the fuck up. That's what he's fucking doing." Now, aside from that particular phrase, there's a lot of foul language, a lot of, agitated fear and anger and aggression going on this tape. Mr. Fiorino was very composed, did not use foul language, was not aggressive in any way that I could tell. But I also have to make note here that he was fully aware that he was being recorded. The police officers were not. Mr. Fiorino had offered to show the officer his permit to carry. The officer responded that you cannot open carry within city limits. The fact of the matter is that you can, and the police officer was ignorant of that fact. It looks as if Mr. Fiorino actually was setting them up. I believe by carrying a tape recorder, open carrying, which he had not done before by his admission. He had concealed carried. So what I think we have here is a situation where a young man was trying to instigate some kind of reaction out of law enforcement by open carrying, and a police officer that didn't know the law. Once it was figured out 40 minutes later that he was entitled to carry openly in the city of Philadelphia, they let him go. And you'd think that would be the end of it. But 2 months later, Mr. Fiorino posted that audio recording on YouTube and displayed it to the world. And that is the second reason why I think that he did this, to instigate some kind of reaction from the police and to prove a point and to make a point. I think it was five days after the YouTube video was posted, he was arrested for disorderly conduct and reckless endangerment. But there are a couple of things that disturb me about this situation. Many gun rights activists believe that this is a Second Amendment issue, when it's not at all. Once the police officer found that he was within his rights to carry openly within the city limits of Philadelphia, they let him go. Also, because they were fully aware at some point that he was audio recording them, they didn't confiscate that. So I think that they believed that it was a done deal at that point. And I think that it was a reaction to his posting on YouTube and nothing more. As far as I'm concerned, this isn't a Second Amendment or a Fourth Amendment issue. This is a First Amendment issue. He had every right to post that video. The police officers were fully aware that he had recorded it, and they did nothing to prevent it or to confiscate the recording. I also believe that many people view YouTube as reporters, as reporting. And I believe that many people on YouTube think of themselves as reporters, as press, that they are reporting information to the general public that they may or may not have access to. And so, whether rightly or wrong, I believe that this is a First Amendment issue, and he is covered by the freedom of speech and the freedom of press. Now, one of the reasons I think that the police officers did not confiscate the audio recorder was because there's no expectation of privacy in public. I don't think that they could have gotten away with it. But I think it was probably been the smartest thing they could have done, because it would have stopped the ball from rolling downhill and gathering speed. Now, police officers across the country and around the world belong to a very exclusive group of people. There's a bond there that you would find very similar to those bonds that are created in the military. When you have to depend upon your fellow officers to save your life, and when your fellow officers have to depend on you to save theirs, it creates a bond that is unique within society. And because of that, they will go to great lengths to protect each other. There's many, many, many cases of police abuse in this country. In some places it's getting so bad that it's just unbelievable. In Newark, the United States Department of Justice has instigated an investigation because there's been over 460 complaints against the police department in that city. That's pretty significant. And I think that's happening all across the United States. And I think the reason that they got so upset about the posting on YouTube was because it violated transparency. It created transparency into behaviors and actions that the police don't want anybody to know. In Chicago, you can get 15 years in prison for recording a police officer in the line of duty. And the abuse is so widespread. Even in San Diego, they've instituted a 7-point plan to try and identify police officers before they go over the edge and go into an abusive mode. And they set up a hotline for citizens to call in when abuse occurs. But in many ways, I understand the bond and the protection and the results of what happens when you're involved in a brotherhood of that kind. When you face danger every single day, like our soldiers in Iraq or Afghanistan, when your life is threatened every single day, you develop a tainted view of the world. Many develop PTSD, soldiers and police officers alike. And they live in that constantly. That's going to make for some pretty messed up psyches, I tell you. Soon an us against them mentality is developed. And that us against them mentality is not us, the police, against them, the criminals. It's us, the police, against them, the citizenry. That's you and me And even though police officers are not technically in a war zone, they suffer the effects of living in a war zone every single day. And the majority of time that was spent during those 40 minutes in which he was detained was trying to determine whether or not the open carry law applied inside or outside the city limits. And apparently the police officers discovered that it was entirely legal to open carry within the city bounds, which they were unaware of. So if nothing else, maybe that's what this entire incident will do, will enlighten police officers within the city of Philadelphia. And how this plays out, I have no idea. His court date is July 14th, I believe. And it all depends on how the court sees this case. If they see this as an individual setting up police officers, I don't think it'll go well for him. But I also think if that's the case, then this might be taken all the way to the Supreme Court. Not as a violation of his Second Amendment rights, possibly on his Fourth Amendment rights, certainly on his First Amendment rights, and of course implied in all this are the Ninth Amendment rights, which nobody ever cites, but a very significant thing to know and understand. So I'm going to post some of the interviews with Mr. Fiorino below so that you can go and listen to them for yourselves. This is an interesting case. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. It could be a done deal in July, or it could go all the way up to the Supreme Court. There's no way of knowing. But he is a man on a mission, and that's pretty clear to me. So I doubt that it will end in July. So until next time, for our families, our neighbors, our friends, and our communities, preservation.